everyone, how's it going? This is another blackout reading. I'm just writing a lot this weekend. I am going to be working on a book about my life. There's a lot of shit that I am transmuting, and this one is called The Making of the Lioness, and it's about another period in my life that I buried for a long time. I am 40. This all happened between, the age of 5 and I would say like 28. So a while ago. And, I'm just letting it rip. So here we go. I hope you like it. The Making of the Lioness. I think most women carry around some secrets. I think it's ingrained in our DNA due to culture and expectations placed for many generations back. Every girl is born with these unsaid rules that they are to be a certain way in public, and what may or may not go over well with the rest of society if they were caught doing certain things. I'm not saying I agree with this prison-like mindset that keeps us in a cage and keeps us from being our true selves in the open, but I have to be honest. It exists in most women, and it is always limiting and unfair. The making of the lioness began when I was just a kid. I experienced trauma in a way no little girl should ever face or endure. I do not ever wish to go into detail about my attacker or about the times that I was hurt because I was just too small and too innocent to see the trouble or to defend myself. My sexual predator was not the only one who harmed me as a child. I often had a target on my back. I was just one of those kids that walked around with a permanent smile on my face, and I had my head in the clouds. I often walked along singing or giggling to myself about some critter I saw or about something I was thinking about. I was born in my own universe, and my mind helped me to escape some really hard times for myself and my family. It also made me a target. I didn't pay much attention to the people around me so much when I was a kid. And as I said, I was often looking down or talking to some critter or insect or just off in la la land. Had I been more aware of my surroundings, I probably could have avoided being bullied or beat up more often. I was around 6 the first time I was punched in the face for no reason. I was the littlest of my siblings at the time, and I got out of school about 45 minutes before my older siblings. I lived in a tougher area with not the greatest of people, but it was far from the areas where gangs had taken over. I still lived in a suburb of the city, just a poor one. My school was a short walk to the apartment I lived in, about a 5-minute walk straight from school to my house. I only had to cross the main road once, right in front of my apartment building. At that time, it was not uncommon for little kids that lived that close to walk by themselves. It was just a different time. Not many of us went to daycare after school let out, or daycare was most often our siblings or other family members. Most of the parents were poor or single parents who couldn't afford to hire any extra help and still needed to work to provide for their family. I often walked with another little girl that split off near my house, which made it a shorter walk by myself in the long run. As I said, I did not live in the best place for a little girl to be coming home by herself. The apartment we lived in was actually in the middle of a parking lot. There was no yard and no grass to play in. People parked on all sides of the building, and I had to always make sure they saw me before attempting to climb the steps to my door, as I was little and they could have hit me. The parking lot was shared with a bar. It was also a restaurant, so the daytime was not so bad, but there was always drunk people around at night, and there was always fights in the parking lot on the weekends. My mom had strict rules that I was to go straight home and lock the door and call her so she knew that I made it home safe. I was to stay put until my older siblings got home. Often they took me with them with their friends so I didn't have to sit home by myself. They made me a snack first, and we always watched our cartoons and did our homework before we went out to play. My siblings did look out for me, and they took good care of me, but there was almost an hour every day that I was completely on my own. My sister had pissed off the troublemaker kids across the street. She had made friends with the teens and was trying to fit in with their crowd, but I think they were pressuring her to try and get her into their crap, and my sister was smart enough to avoid committing crimes. We honestly were pretty good thieves for little kids, and we often stole things for ourselves, but mostly food because my mom did not always have enough for extras, and we just wanted to help. I'm not proud of it. I'm just saying we were typical hood kids who did what they had to get by. My sister was not the type of person who wanted to beat people up for fun or rob big amounts of money or do a bunch of drugs like the kids across the street. They were also being raised by a single mom, but she was downright rotten. She was always giving my mom shit about living near a bar, yet sold drugs all day out of her house and made her kids sell too. She was just a trashy bitch, to be honest. They threatened my sister at school in front of a teacher, and because of school policy and their rap sheet of trouble, the school decided to toss the girl once again, and the oldest daughter that had threatened to kill my sister. My sister was not scared, and she did not narc because everyone knew that just made it worse. But the teacher pressed because she was downright fed up with the girl bullying people and causing trouble in her class every day, and she used my sister as the last straw to get her expelled, which only put a bigger target on my sister's back. A week after that, I was walking home, and I saw them following me and my friend. I do not know why, but I felt like I had to get my friend out of trouble. She was a lot littler than me. Both of us were 6, but she was tiny, and she had one leg longer than the other and walked a little slower than me due to her special shoe. I told her that she had better cross the street and act like she didn't know me until the other people left. I didn't think they were going to do anything other than come over and talk to me, but I knew them, and I knew they liked to use other people against the people they were trying to bully. I knew about my sister and what had happened, and even though I was 6, I did not like them, and I wanted to tell them to leave me alone, but I understood how things went. I also knew I was alone, and if I said anything, they would just definitely come over and fuck with me. I was halfway home, and I saw my friend turn on her street. She looked back at me once with nervous eyes, but I just smiled and gave her a small wave to let her know I would be okay. The goons behind me couldn't see my face or my reaction to my friend, but they had moved in right behind me. They began teasing me. I had a pink Power Ranger book bag, and my grandma had gotten it for me for school. I usually had to use my big sister's old one, so I was proud to have my own, and one I really liked. I just ignored them and pulled my bag a little tighter on my arms, fearing they would try to steal it from me. They liked to take kids' bags and dump it out and take whatever they wanted, and I had candy and change in my bag I wanted to keep. I was scared because I was just a kid, and I didn't want them to follow me anymore. My little arms and lips began to tremble when I felt the girl step on the back of my shoe. It hurt, and I knew she had scraped some skin off the back of my ankle. I was not very loud, but I said, "Back off, you're being mean," which only made them laugh at me and be like, "Oh, the little baby thinks I'm being mean." She grabbed my arm and swung me around, and I had no idea why she was doing that or what she was going to do, but she punched me square in the nose, and blood instantly started pouring out. I had never in my life been punched like that for no reason, and it really hurt bad, and since I was only 6, I started to cry really loud. The brother seemed to take pity on me and stopped his sister from hitting me again. I just looked at her and said, "Why did you do that? I wasn't doing anything." She got close to my face and smiled. "Tell your sister she's next." I was terrified, and I regretted it the minute it was out of my mouth, but I looked her in the face, even though blood was pouring into my mouth, and I said, "You stay away from my sister, you fucking bitch," which made the brother whistle and wink at me and said, "There you go, kid. Toughen up a bit or people will fuck with you more." The older girl pushed me and laughed, but she changed her she changed her tone. She ruffled my hair a bit rough, messing up my pigtails my mom did for me. "You're a smart kid. You don't go telling anyone what happened." I just flipped her off and turned quickly on my heels, and since I was right near the corner gas station I had gone in every day since moving there, I ran towards the door like my life depended on it, and I cleared the parking lot, but they were hot on my heels. The woman behind the counter was always nice to me, and on occasion told me to pick out a 25-cent candy bar on her. She saw my nose, and she saw the kids coming. Like me, she knew they were troublemakers and bullies, and she had broken up a few fights they had in that very parking lot over the years. She told me to get behind the counter, which surprised me because I wasn't allowed to go back there. But I did so without hesitation because I was scared to death. When they came in, she stood in the doorway with her arms folded. "You think it's fun to hurt little girls? Why don't you swing on me, you good-for-nothing piece of shit? You think you're so tough, I could break you like a fucking twig. Come on then, see how far you get." I had to hide my smirk. Seriously, that woman never swore, even when we were being complete assholes. But something about seeing my bloody face had her furious. The girl who hit me went on about going to get her mother, and the woman just smiled. "Go ahead. Let me send her right back to jail again for the third time. Are you ready for foster care, punk?" With that, the girl and her two brothers fled the store pretty quickly. She cleaned up my nose and called my mom after I gave her the number. My mom told me she was on her way home and that she was calling the police and to go straight home. The lady at the store insisted on walking me over and had her co-worker man the counter. It was just a short walk across the street, and she made sure I got inside and locked the door. My mom got home about the same time my sister and brother got home from school. My sister was furious that they had hurt me and wanted to go right across the street herself, but my mom made her and my brother take me inside and help me with a snack and homework. My mom, who knew about nursing, looked over my nose and said it wasn't broke, and since I could breathe and the bleeding stopped that I would be okay, but she put ice on it and gave me some children's medicine. It bruised up pretty fast because I was so pale. The officer took some pictures and I had to tell them what happened, but they were really sweet to me and even gave me a lollipop they had gotten from the bank on lunch. He was going to take it home to his son, he said, but he thought I needed it more. It made them all mad to see a little 6-year-old with a badly bruised face. Not just my siblings and mom and the police officers, but the people had spilled out of the bar. They knew me. I was always around, and I was always sweet to everyone, and they bought my lemonade when I made a stand, even though I never put enough sugar in it. In that time, when you mess with a little kid, the town did step up, especially when it was bad like that. The school arranged for me to get dropped off by the bus, even though it was only 2 blocks from my house. They wanted to protect me from a future attack. The girl went back to juvie a few days later because my mom pressed charges. I think she was scared that she was going to stab or shoot my sister, since they were known to be crazy and had access to weapons. And since they targeted me, the littlest, she also feared they would keep hounding me or go after my brother, who was only a year older than me. My mom also knew what it meant to call the cops, but everyone actually stood by her. There were times in that area when they understood why things had to go the legal way. And when you start hurting little kids, people just don't want you around. They want you gone, so no other little kid gets hurt again. For the most part, anyway. There was a sense of hood justice that still existed back then. A few weeks after the girl got sent away, the family moved away mostly because they were behind on rent and the landlord was sick of their shit. They were always breaking things and they always had the cops coming over. We were all relieved to be rid of that family. No one else gave anyone as much shit. There were arguments here and there, of course, but no wars and no drug dealers so open and so cruel. My mom had worked hard to stay out of the worst parts of the city, but we were just not able to afford a nicer area just yet. My mom took me to the mall a few weeks later. She had met someone who knew of a man that had a dojo in the mall. My mom's friend told him what had happened to me, and he gave my mom a really sweet deal to put all 3 of us kids in karate. He knew she was a single mom and that she was struggling to pay the bills and to feed the family. My grandparents stepped up and paid the little fee he wanted just so we could go. I loved the classes at first, even though I had a really hard time focusing. Since I was diagnosed with autism in my adult years, at the time no one understood my weird tendencies. My mom just said I was eccentric and that it was not a bad thing. But school was hard for me and so was learning movements. My sensei picked up very early that I saw things backwards as he watched my movements that he was showing me in the mirror in front of him. He actually switched his movements so I would move the right way. Most of my teachers had not noticed I was dyslexic, but after 3 classes with my sensei, he seemed to know I was working with a learning disability. He was so patient with me, and he always lit up with me every time I finally got the hang of things. I was definitely the slowest learner in the class, but he never made me feel like I was not progressing. He also noticed I spoke in whispers and worked with me so that I would have some confidence and taught me how to project. He gave me exercises to help me with spelling and my speech while I was learning what I needed to know to complete my white belt. I was the only kid in my class that failed the first white belt test. I got shy and sat down and curled in a ball, and I just told him I couldn't do it because I couldn't remember the right steps. Keep in mind, I was about 6. Instead of being hard on me like he normally would, he just sat down on the floor with me and taught me to meditate and to breathe in and out. I stayed after class, and when everyone was gone, he asked if I wanted to take the test now. I said yes, and I passed. My mom didn't get mad that we would be home late, and she was proud of me for seeing it through. I think that was the first time in my life I felt like I could really do good things and that I was smart. This is where I learned my confidence and how to defend myself. I went from being scared to walk anywhere by myself to walking with confidence. I knew what I needed to do to get away, or so I thought. The following year is when the really bad things happened to me that I had buried for years, and I do not want to talk about that here. All I will really say is I was just not strong enough to defend myself because I was outmatched by height and weight, and no matter how I swung or what moves I did, I was an ant fighting a human, and it broke my soul and spirit far worse than a punch to the nose. It was my sensei that noticed I would not dress in the changing room. I was wearing layers, and if anyone got too close to me, I would shake. He assumed I was being bullied by another kid and had no idea what I was really dealing with. Again, he took me under his wing, but he started to be tougher on me. My grades were slipping, I was acting out in school, and I was developing an attitude problem. I even wanted to stop taking karate because nothing I did was stopping the attacks or stopping the bullies. I had lost my will to go on and my will to fight. I was a shell of the kid I was the year before, and it was my sensei that recommended I go into therapy, that he was concerned for me, and I was not a bad kid, but seemed to be really struggling. I went to therapy, but I would not speak. I was frustrated because I could not read and write, and the teachers had still not noticed, and it was getting harder and harder to remember to keep up pretending in school. My mom was home less and less as she got another job, and my siblings were starting to leave me out of things. I spent a lot more time alone while they were out with their friends. My mom assumed it was the area, and with help from a friend, we moved into a real house. My mom had rented it from a friend in the same town my dad had grown up in and where my grandparents lived, Manoa. It was a really safe neighborhood with a better school, and I had more kids my age to play with. The girl across the street who visited her dad on the weekends was actually my age, and we made quick friends. I thought all the bad stuff would stop because I got away, and I figured that I wouldn't be found. For a little bit, things got better for me, and I started to feel safe again. I earned my orange belt that year and was getting quicker at learning, and my attitude and my grades were improving. The following year, the school learned about my learning issues, and I was sent to a special program after school, so I had to give up karate for that year because I needed to get back on track. They made me repeat 3rd grade, and I was furious because all my friends were not going to be in my class or in my grade anymore. But I dug in. I wanted to be smart. I wanted to read a book for real and be able to write. I never worked so hard like I did that school year and all through the summer. My grandparents had paid a pretty penny so I could have one-on-one learning, and it saved me from not having to repeat another year. By the end of my 2nd pass through 3rd grade, I was caught up with my peers. They told me that was amazing, and most kids had to take a few years to get back after going through what I did. Not many teachers understood dyslexia or was able to teach me, so although I advanced to 4th grade, I struggled with math, and they kept me in resource for math and English just for some extra help. This is when I was in classes with the special needs department. I watched kids who could not even speak, or were blind or deaf, or had Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or severe learning disorders, or what we now know as autism or ADHD. All the kids they just couldn't get to settle down and conform to the day were shoved in this room. At first I was mortified, but after a few days I quickly began to enjoy my 2 classes a day with them. I felt like I was finally seen and understood by people, and we really did help one another. I helped some kids eat their lunch or write. Making them laugh filled me with such joy. I quickly became a class leader, as they called it, and it also humbled me. I may have been through a lot, but as a kid, I understood then that I was lucky, that my issues were minor, and that I could look and act normal and not be so judged by the world. Before that class, I kept my head down and my mouth shut when bad things happened. But something changed in me that year. I would be out at recess and see my friends being teased or hear people talking loudly about them, and I would ball up my fists and tell them clean off, or shove them down and tell them to try to get up, and every time they talked about my friends, I would knock them on their ass again, which, of course, got me in hot water with the school. My mom decided going back to karate would be a better outlet for my anger, and she knew my sensei was someone I needed to help me progress or process my anger in a healthy way. I was happy to be back in class, and I took it more seriously. I went from being the worst in the class to being the top of my class. I came in early and stayed later, and I worked really, really hard to move up and gain more experience. I started competing with other dojos in the area, and I won the first award ever in my life. Up until that moment, I had been the stupid kid who couldn't read, the kid that was easy to push around, the gullible girl that believed whatever you said, and the victim of some truly horrible shit. But that day, I won for being the best fighter of both dojos. I felt pride in myself for the first time. I knew I was smart then, and I knew I was good at karate. I was walking on air, and I finally thought I was going to be okay. But it was short-lived. A few months later, the neighbors called the cops on us because my brother had mowed the lawn and the grass clippings got on their driveway. And instead of asking my brother to please sweep it off, which he would have if they talked to him any other way than the way they did, I was out front when it happened. They were two very angry lesbians who hated the town because the town, well, they were prejudiced as fuck against an openly gay couple in their community. Before that day, I actually felt bad for them and all the signs that were left in the yard, the writing on their car, or the eggings. Maybe they just saw someone they could finally direct their anger at and push around. But they came at my brother pretty hard. And keep in mind, my brother was just a little kid, too. He was only a year older than me, and he was trying to be the man of the house and mow the lawn. We never had our own lawn to mow, and he took pride in it. We all did. My mom even planted flowers, and we finally had a cool backyard to play in that lined up to the woods that went on for miles, and we enjoyed it. So this hurt more for us, that we finally had all this, and the neighbors just wanted to make hell for us. They came out, verbatim, "Hey, dumb fuck, who the fuck taught you how to mow? Who the hell is going to clean off this driveway, you piece of shit? Why don't you tell your mom to tie her fucking tubes and stop popping out ingrates, or at least take the time to mow her own fucking lawn? Are you children or slaves?" That is what I remember hearing, but they did go on a lot longer. Some of the words I had to look up in my dictionary later because I had never heard them before, like ingrate. My brother just lifted his chin and looked them both in the eye. When you cut grass, no matter what way you go, there's going to be clippings. Nothing I did would have changed a damn thing. You're lucky my mom is not home right now, because if she was, you'd be eating those fucking grass clippings. Without a word, he turned on the mower and moved a bit closer so the grass blew on them and their pants. And I laughed so hard and stuck out my tongue at them and gave them the bird like my mom let us do when someone cut us off, which made them more mad. So they went in, all pissed, and called the cops. That very person I was hoping never found me again knocked on my door. I was not the one to answer it, and I ran up to my room, but he knew who my family was, and he put two and two together. After that, he started to drive by my house frequently. Months went by, and I kept going to karate. Only now I was not planning for a competition. I was training for my life. So if he ever came for me again, I would get away that time. I threw myself into it, and everyone just assumed it was a passion. I was fucking terrified, and it was the only way to cope with the constant harassment from the devil himself. It was almost a full 10 months before I was walking home near dusk, and his cruiser came into view. The sweat was soaking my shirt to my back as his car got closer. Everything in me was shaking. But this time, I did not run. I did not look his way. I acted like I owned the fucking street, and nothing he did was going to get me off it. He stopped his cruiser next to me. His door was close enough to open it and pull me in if he really wanted to. So I kicked his fucking cruiser and I kept my leg there with all my weight on it, and I looked him dead in the fucking face. I don't know how I did it, but I looked at him and I said, "You're done fucking with me, because I will talk this time. I will tell them exactly what you did. I won't clean up. I will walk straight home to my mom, who is a fucking nurse, and I will tell her what a fucking scumbag raper you are. You don't scare me. It's not my fault you can't get a lady to like you who's your own fucking age, you worthless fucking pig." Verbatim. Because at that mantra, every time I got scared, I repeated it in my mind. I remember every word because it lit a fire in my soul. It pissed him off, and he laughed, and he tried to get out of his cruiser. I released my foot just enough so he stuck his leg out. And then I kicked it again. I kicked the door with all my might so he fell back and the door slammed against his shin. I didn't wait long before I released it and then kicked it again so that his shin got kicked again until he put his leg inside the car. A small victory. He sped off after telling me I was going to regret this. It was the first time I got him. I hurt him, and his cruiser left, and I turned to the grass and threw up. I was fucking terrified, but also wanting to laugh hysterically. I didn't know how to feel about it. I was just happy I had wounded his pride. But I knew it may make him come harder for me. But at least he knew I wasn't a fucking mouse anymore. He left me alone for weeks, long enough that I believed I was done with it all. But the anger began to surface for all that was done, for him finding me again, and all that came with the trauma I told no one about. He started to threaten my family when he did creep up on me with his cruiser. If I talked, he would do this or he would do that. I just muttered things like, fuck you, and I'm sorry, these memories make me nervous. I just muttered things like, fuck you, or straight ignored him. Once I was ignoring him like he wasn't there, and he threw his hot coffee at me. I had a blister on my neck from it, but I did not show a single flinch. I was learning to hide pain. I looked at him, and for the first time, I called someone a fucking pussy. I heard my brother say it to one of his friends, and I figured it was a pretty nasty diss to say to an adult. A few days later, he tried to get me in the woods. I was looking for my brother and his friends, who often went back there to work on their fort. There was a bike path at the end of the street where we entered the woods. He saw me go in, parked, and tried to get me once again. I ran at first, but when it was clear that he would chase me across the whole woods, I stopped in a place I had some room to fight in. I heard my sensei's voice in my head about stances and staying on my feet. That size did not matter, just watch their movements and dodge it. If I could just stay on my feet, I could kick his ass. But I was shaking like a leaf. I got into my stance anyway. He stopped and looked at me and straight laughed. And he said something like, "Oh, look who thinks she's tough now." I said nothing, and I was just trying to control my breathing. I would have fought for my life, but I heard voices in the distance, and I took a different shot. I will fucking scream. My brother is right over that hill, and they will see you out here bullying a little kid. Go ahead, try it. He looked in the direction of the voices, and I thanked my fucking lucky stars that they were getting closer. I did not know if it was my brother or not. I didn't care. I just knew that help would come this time. I wanted to throw up, but I smiled at him, and I started to scream at the top of my lungs like a crazy person. He swore ripely and turned on his heels towards the opening. I followed him, running after him this time, screaming like a fucking crazed kid getting murdered, hot on his heels. He made it out of the path first and was almost to the car when I came out still screaming. The woman in the house across the street from his cruiser came out to watch. I just pointed at him and screamed, "Fucking pervert!" He got in his car and sped off. The woman just looked at me weird and then went right back inside. No one liked that son of a bitch. He was a prick to everyone. I think many women in that area ended up like me, no matter their age, because he got away with it and because he thought he was entitled. The kids who came out was not my brother or his friends, and they asked about the screaming. I just acted like I had heard the same thing and I was out there investigating. I was already the weird one, and I didn't want more gossip about my crazy behavior. I was pretty sure everyone knew what was going on. I am sure they saw him stalking me in his cruiser multiple times. I am sure they saw the day I kicked his car. No one came out to see if I was okay, or if I needed help, or to ask him what was going on. If you saw that cop, you left him alone. He never messed with any of my family. He knew better. He picked out the one he thought was weakest. If he messed with more than one kid in a family, they may talk and get someone to actually listen, or they would tag team and get him caught. He was extremely good at being a predator and covering his tracks, or he wouldn't have gotten away with it for as long as he did. I kept on with karate, and there were pockets of time I was not bothered again. I did lose one more time to that man before I became the better fighter. But the one time I did get him off me, I fucking hurt him. I know I left a scar. I saw it in the drawing during a court proceeding many years later. The little girl had described a thick scar right above his pedophilia tool. I caught him with my Swiss Army knife I stole from my brother and started to carry in my sock. It was not a big blade, but I took time to sharpen it. I hit him across the face with a rock. I grabbed it in my fist, and it gave me enough time to get the knife out of my sock. His pants were down, and I just swung out. He swore, and I saw blood, and he ran off. I didn't even mean to really hit. I was just trying to wave and get him off me. I had blood on my knife, and I let it fall to the dirt because my hands were shaking so fucking bad. I had blood in my mouth because he elbowed me in the face, trying to knock me out so I would stop fighting. I had learned to take a hit and not react and ignore the pain, and had I not done that, he probably would have knocked me out. I was born with no glass jaw, and thank God for it. I admit it gave me great pleasure to know that scar stuck and that he had cut it. I admit it gave me great pleasure to know that scar stuck and that he said that he had cut it during a hunting accident and needed a few stitches. While he was saying that, I looked him dead in the face in the courtroom. He knew I had done it, and I made it known that it was me that put it there by the look on my face, and it almost made him stumble in his testimony. Another victory I'm proud to own. I ended up with 2 wins in the end from that knife, which I did return to my brother's room after I cleaned it like I never touched it at all, and he never knew it was missing. I stopped feeling the need to carry it when I heard that the predator had moved to a new department for a higher position and wouldn't be around to bother me anymore. I thought I had won. I thought I was healed from it all, but that was just another denial I buried within myself. Let's move on to my older years. After I lost the love of my life and another great man I loved parted ways because he would rather risk his life than be there to love me and build a life with me. I was fucking angry, and I was a broken kid, and everything pissed me off. I was pissed that I never talked about what happened to me. I was pissed that I never turned that fucker in. I was pissed that I had lost people I really loved and the dreams I wanted for myself were gone. All I had was fight. I was harder than I had ever been, cold even. I wanted to take on the whole world and fight every man I saw. I had a big thing against men at the time. At the time, I was introduced to the underground fight game. It was not something you see on the movies, no mafia-like shit or anything like that. Although you could always make some quick cash beating people up for hire, but that was never my thing. Mostly we were all trained, and some wanted to go into professional fighting and viewed street fights as a way to get tougher and become a better fighter. A fight night was thrown together by locals and a pot was created. Some were a lot and some were decent, and there was usually 4 fighters a night. Whoever stood at the end of the 4 fights won all the money. There was not much rules, but the rules were created by the 2 fighters per round. I just insisted on bare knuckles or freestyle. I did not allow weapons, nor did I insist on a complete knockout. Some people kept hitting until someone was all the way out, but I always thought that was dangerous for myself and for the other fighters. I was angry and I wanted to fight, but I was not stupid. At first, I stuck to the women, but since there was less than a handful of women in my area that were trained, we got sick of fighting each other, and a new competition was started. If a man was within 10 to 15 pounds of our weight and they agreed to fight a woman, then we entered male-female fights. At first, it was impossible to get a man to agree. No one wanted to be the guy beating up women, so it began with gloves and no full contact. Once the few of us proved that we were tough and could take it, the rules changed, but it took a while. At this point, I was good. I was in great shape from soccer and dance, and I had mastered all my sensei could teach me. He actually moved back to Japan the year I started street fighting because it was my only real access to learning more about fighting. I was able to cover my injuries because my parents and siblings rarely came to my soccer games or dance stuff, and I would say I fell in dance or caught an elbow in gym or during a game. I covered my legs and sides and knuckles if they were in rough shape, and lucky for me, I never really needed a hospital for anything I took in the ring. At first, people laughed at me, said I was a lost little girl, but the more I won, the more people heard of me. The one thing we did not do was use real names. Everyone had a code name because what we were doing was very illegal. Organized street fighting for money was a big deal then and probably is now, but I was under 18 and a stupid kid at the time. I never entered anything that was huge enough to be investigated for long. I was smart and booked my own fights. I did not book the same organizer twice within the same month, so if they were being watched, I was not a regular. I didn't know any of them personally. They did not know where I was from, and no one in my family ever knew of my fights or came to them. I needed a nickname, so the Lioness was born, because it rhymed with my real name since everyone called me Lizzie in the family. Get it? Lizzie, the Lioness. It all went together. I kind of had a dream of going professionally, and I figured later I could add my real name to it. Slowly my legend grew, and I did get some heat for it, but I used my innocent nature to my advantage and just pretended to be a spectator and not the fighter. And lucky for me, no one turned me in if they lost. I earned a lot of money, enough to get the hell out of here when I was 18. I did play around with some fighting in Pennsylvania, which I also hid from my fiancé when I lost him from the war, and everyone I cared about, I was still out fighting. I did a lot more of it then. I hid it all. No one who loved me or knew me well has ever seen me fight. They may have heard about the Lioness, but no one would have ever suspected it was me. I was away at school, or I was just working a double, or at some sports game. I kept a low profile all my life. I lived a secret life as a kid, and I have always had a secret life. Something I did on the side, including being scouted for a secret debate club in my first year of college. How was the Lioness born? From the fire, from my burnt flesh that was scorched by the devils of this world. I was born a wildflower that this world tried to pick and stomp into the ground, and no matter the drought or the heavy rain or the lack of nourishment, my stem kept rising and my flower kept blooming, even in the dark of night. I was always the Lioness, and I spent too long meek and weak and broken before I realized the strength I carry. I say a lot that love saved me, and I think it definitely softened my heart and brought me out of coldness. But it was the Lioness that saved me. So many times I laid down in defeat. It was the Lioness that whispered in my little ear, "Get up, little warrior. This world and its devils will never break you because your power is galactic and fierce. Remember, no one defeats you without your permission. Get up and fight." With every odd stacked against me, I pulled my knees in, took a breath, and pushed up on my shaky hands. No one beat me in the ring because I controlled the ring. I could not control my world, but it was the Lioness that made the world less scary. by showing me what I could accomplish in a small corner of it. I no longer fight at all, or for money, or train like I used to when I fought or played sports. I have opened my closet, and I have taken out every box that I put a lid on, and I opened it and released all the moths of my old haunts and set myself free. I have fight in me for whatever I face, but I no longer need to fight others or the world. I am no longer angry, and I am embracing the softness of my heart and opening myself up to be seen as the beautiful flower and not a prickly thorn. I appreciate and love the lioness in there. To me, she is my inner child, and I protect her in a way I wish I was protected before. It makes me a crusader for the suppressed and abused. It makes me stand up and demand better for myself and this world. The lioness gave me confidence and pride and self-love, and I never would have survived without that hard-ass bitch in there. When I need her, I let her out, and I let her do what she needs to do because she will always get me home safe. These days, my wit and my intelligence sees me through. But I know I sleep a lot better because I know she is in there. And I know that both sides of me will never let this world break me. It took me years to see the lioness at all, but I fucking love her. For all her imperfections and brokenness, for all the pain she carries for me still to this day, for all the lessons she taught me that took me from all of my pain and strife. She is a legend, even if she only exists in my mind, and I am proud of her. But most importantly, I am proud of the woman who came out of the flame to the other side, where rainbows and smiles and happiness exists. So many do not reach that state of grace. I am not a survivor. I am a warrior because I will never stop fighting for what I want, what I need, and against all the evil of this world. God bless all like the lioness, who lifts women up when they are broken and lost and alone and teaches them that life is theirs to make. Everyone who finds their inner lioness does not get things taken from them again. They do not cower in darkness. They become one with it and let their eyes adjust so that they can look any and all trouble or any and all enemies in the face and smile and welcome the fucking challenge. The lioness is unbreakable, the unshakable, and the queen of my world. I hope you all learn to roar and go claws out in that way. Because if you do, you are magic and you are always victorious. The end. Hope you liked it. Boom.